friendship with every race on earth.
Your thoughts, spiritual and positive, will spread.
It will become the desire of others, growing stronger and stronger until it reaches the minds of all men. If you desire with all your heart friendship with every race on earth,
Your thoughts, spiritual and positive, will spread.
it will become the desire of others, growing stronger and stronger until it reaches the minds of all men. You've got to find the source, my friend. It's not so hard to do. You've got to find the source, my friend. It's all left up to you. There is an answer. A new day's coming soon. You've got to find the source, my friend. Get your hearts and minds in tune.
We have come this far.
We have come this far.
We have come this far.
We've come this far.
We have come this far.
We have come this far by faith.
There is an answer. A new day's coming soon. You got to find the source, my friend. Get your hearts and minds in tune. Don't be patronizing to me, my friend, and I'll try not to be suspicious of you. If you show me your genuine friendship, I will try to warmly respond to
We have come this far by faith.
Tumefika mpaka hapa kwa imani.
We have come this far by faith.
Hemos llegado tan lejos por fe.
Nous sommes arrivés aussi loin par la foi.
There is an answer. A new day's coming soon. You got to find the source, my friend. Get your hearts and minds in tune. Get your hearts and minds in tune. Get your hearts and minds in tune.
Wow. Thank you so much. What an uplifting entry into Baha'i.chat today. That was the Power of Faith from the Baha'i Gospel Choir, led by our very own Van Gilmer. Thank you so much. We are so happy to invite you all to join us today to Baha'i.chat. Baha'i.chat is a conversation series dedicated to our interconnectedness. Baha'i.chat has made a decision to commit itself to addressing America's most fundamental and vital and challenging issue, that being racism in America. We have the majority of our Baha'i chats that address this issue. If you'd like to see past Baha'i chats about addressing America's most vital and challenging issue, visit our YouTube channel. Baha'i.chat is an uplifting moment when we turn our thoughts to addressing the world's ills through a spiritual lens. Each session is rooted in the Baha'i writings and the fundamental teachings of the oneness of God, the oneness of religion, and the oneness of all mankind. We take this time to have a conversation with individuals who are leading the way in their communities and how it is that they are addressing these fundamental issues through their work in the world and putting these daily principles into action. So there are no priests or clergy in the Baha'i faith. One of the most fundamental teachings of the Baha'i faith is independent investigation of the truth. If you'd like to be connected with a Baha'i, if this is something new to you and you don't have any Baha'is in your world, you can go ahead and email us at info@Bahai.chat and simply write the word guide in the subject line, and we'll make sure to guide you to someone who can accompany you on this process if you'd like to know more about the Baha'i faith. The Baha'i faith is the newest independent world religion. The prophet founder of the Baha'i faith came in the mid-1800s. His name was Baha'u'llah, which means the glory of God. His teachings have spread to every community throughout the world. We are the second most widespread religion in the world, and the fundamental teachings of the Baha'i faith is rooted in oneness, the oneness of God, as I mentioned, the oneness of religion, and the oneness of humanity. Our world still struggles so much with what God has said and science has proven, that we are all one. But Baha'is all over the world are working with their local communities to create change, to focus on what is truly important, the life of the spirit, to address prejudice and racism, and to fight for justice, to amplify the equality of men and women, and to address the oneness of science and religion, to work towards universal education for all children, and towards world peace. Today, we are very honored to have two friends who learned about the Baha'i faith that were both attending A&T University, which was a historically Black college, and Greensboro is, North Carolina, in the early 1960s. Many of you probably know that the Greensboro, North Carolina was the home of the famous sit-ins that started and moved throughout the South in the early 60s. Van and Charles are going to give us a firsthand look at what life was like during that time, how their friendship developed, and how they have served humanity for almost 60 years. There's a quote from the Baha'i writings that talks about racial prejudice. It says, "As to racial prejudice, the corrosion of which for well nigh a century has bitten into the fiber and attacked the whole social structure of American society. It should be regarded as constituting the most vital and challenging issue confronting the Baha'i community at the present stage of its evolution. The ceaseless exertions which this issue of paramount importance calls for, the sacrifices it must impose, the care and vigilance it demands, the moral courage and fortitude it requires, the tact and sympathy it necessitates. Invest this problem, which the American believers are still far from having satisfactorily resolved, with an urgency and importance that cannot be overestimated." This quote was written in the mid to late 1930s, and still today, we're dealing with this issue. These two gentlemen are going to take us for a walk throughout our historical landscape and bring us to the current day. Van and Charles, I want to share a little bit with you about their background, and I'd like to invite Van Gilmer to join me. He is a renowned soloist, composer, and director, is the original organizer and director of the 80-member Baha'i gospel choir that made its first debut appearance before a standing room only audience in the Ramada Hotel ballroom during the second Baha'i World Congress, held in New York City in 1992. Since then, he has directed several Baha'i choirs, including a 100-member Baha'i choir that toured Western Europe in 2004. And Van produced his first CD from that tour entitled The Baha'i Gospel Choir Live in Luxembourg. Van is a native of Greensboro, North Carolina, and graduated from NC Agriculture and Technical State University with a bachelor's in science and agricultural engineering. Next, I'd like to invite Charles Bullock to join us. Charles grew up in a small rural town in Northeast North Carolina. As an educator, he taught elementary, high school, and university levels in the United States and in Africa. He has had a strong passion to improve the education and social economic development of the people on this planet. Thank you so much for that work, both of you, Charles and Van. Dr. Bullock designs and facilitates diversity and inclusion workshops for universities, communities, and civic organizations, and provides personal coaching services. While he lived in West Africa, his training skills were also utilized in United Nations programs in education and sanitation. Dr. Bullock became a member of the Baha'i Faith in 1965 within a few months of Van, and had served in multiple administrative and community capacities. Charles is married and his wife's name is Sandra, and they have 2 sons and 3 granddaughters. To get us started, I wanted to share one additional quote that is quoted in a document called Advent of Divine Justice. It was a letter written to the United States Baha'i community in 1938. And he quotes Baha'u'llah here saying, "Say, O people of God, beware lest the powers of the earth alarm you, or the might of nations weaken you, or the tumult of the people of discord deter you, or the exponents of earthly glory sadden you. Be ye as a mountain in the cause of your Lord, the Almighty, the All-Glorious, the Unconstrained." The 2 of you have been those mighty mountains in this community for so many years. Can you tell us how it is that you came to learn about the Baha'i Faith?
I was invited to sing at the university, and you mentioned it, the North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. A&T College is what it was known for the longest. It's an HBCU, and I was invited to sing at a World Religion Day program. I knew a little bit about it being sponsored by the Baha'i community of Greensboro, and I knew a couple of people in Greensboro who were Baha'is. I just didn't know what the Baha'i Faith was about. So I only consented because a friend invited me to sing. That friend was Bill Allison. Some people here might know him. He's in Atlanta now. But he was rooming almost across the street from me. And he asked me if I would sing at this function for World Religion Day, and I said yes. It snowed that day. I went. I ended up being the only person there who was not a Baha'i, and the only person who actually attended the event. So there were 5 other people there, and they just proceeded to give their talk about World Religion Day and about all religions are one, and I kind of heard it, but I really wasn't paying that much attention because I was thinking about the song I was going to sing, and I was going to play it, and it was in the library, and there was a piano, and I had the music in a little folder, but they never asked me to sing. And they're not asking me to sing. I just figured okay, well, they don't know I'm supposed to sing. So afterwards I greeted them. We had a little chat and I left. And the lady who had invited me to come to, the lady where Bill was staying, tapped on her window. It was also snow on the ground, a lot of snow. And in North Carolina, at least in those days, snow on the ground meant stay in. I mean, you don't come out in a whole lot of snow. So they thought, oh, this student, he saw our ad and he came to hear our presentation. And so they gave it to me. So she asked me, how'd they like you singing? I said, I didn't sing, Miss Hay. She said, what? You didn't sing? She asked me why. I said, well, because they didn't ask me. Well, that led to my being invited by the Baha'i community of Greensboro to come to an apology meeting, kind of. It was we want the Baha'is to hear you sing, and we are going to invite you to come and meet with some of us. So I knew I was going to go, but I didn't want to go by myself. This is during segregated Greensboro, and the Baha'is in Greensboro were mostly white, mostly old, mostly women. And so I asked Charles. Charles and I met at North Carolina A&T in the choir, in the university choir. And we were already friends. And I stopped by his room. I asked him if he would come with me to this thing. And I told him what it was, and he wasn't interested. And I think he only went because I was asking him to go. I mean, he can tell you how he felt. But we went out there. And when I say out, for me, it was out of the black community and into a white community when segregation is just barely over. Just barely over. And this is 1964. And so we went there, and that was the beginning. I mean, we both sat through.
When you say you went there, Van, did you drive?
I drove.
You drove.
I drove. It was several miles from where I lived.
And
it was in a neighborhood where I would not go normally.
So did you feel safe going to that
No,
neighborhood?
no, not at all. That's why I asked Charles to go with me. I wanted somebody with me. And also, the house had a mailbox out on the street, out on the road. So it was a long driveway and a mailbox on the street. And I had to think about turning into that. I wanted to make sure I was at the right numbers on that box if I was going to go into where the house was.
That could mean life or death during those days, right?
Well, it could be. We didn't know what to. I didn't know what to expect, and I guess Charles wasn't from Greensboro, so he may not have had the same apprehension that I had. But I knew it was a place I would not go. So he was the person who accompanied me, and from then on, we continued to go to that house. We continued to meet with those people. We continued to enjoy sitting around the table talking. Maybe he wants to say something about that.
Well, just that, I mean, I went because Van had asked me, but I mean, I wasn't really interested in going hearing about religion. I mean, I'm from a Baptist background for generations. My grandfather and my uncle, my grandmothers, they're all like officers in the church. And so, we were all Baptists, and that's quite all right. And, not only do you have to be Christian, but you should be Baptist. So if you're going to go and hear something about it, you just don't go and hear about other religions. So we went, but we just went because he was invited. And it was interesting, I think, because first of all, to be sitting in a group, and we were the only black people, young black men there, and as Van mentioned, older people. And so the Baha'i started telling us about what the Baha'i faith was, what it stood for, that Christ had returned, his name is Baha'u'llah, They believed in the unity of mankind and all these things. And of course, that was not my experience with religion. You know, if you weren't talking about the Bible, then anything else was just not acceptable. And so we had a lot of very heated discussions. Um, you know, I guess differences of opinion, and but there was always something there that made us want to go back. You know, and so that was the beginning, and that went on for some time, and then we formed relationships with some of the Baha'is. There was one person who was on the faculty at A&T, and we got to know him. And there was also another student who was a female, a black young lady who was a female, and so we got to meet her. And she was from a Baha'i family, and that was kind of unusual to meet a black woman who was not a black young person who's not have the same background as the rest of us. So that was kind of the setting. But the thing that was attractive to me was that they talked about unity and love. God loves all people, and so we knew that. I mean, we knew that from the church. Of course, God loves all people, and God didn't want us to be divided. He wants us to be together because we are all His children. And so we knew that that was true. And then we had these white people who were saying this. Usually black people will say that anyway, but we hear white people say that. And then to also act differently with us. You know, they wouldn't just come to the meeting, but that we became more personal, you know, in meetings and traveling, going to different activities. So
what was it that kept bringing you back? Like, was it those things that, you know, if you
I think it was the idea that God loves all of us and that we are all one, you know, and we knew that, that is the case. It's just the language, you know, you're hearing another religion, you're hearing a name that's strange for you. But the teachings that they were telling us, that we are all creations by one God, then yes, of course we are. Of course we are. And during that time, that was not popular. You know, it was a segregated community. I'd gone to an all-black high school, now a historically black college. Everything was divided. You know, it wasn't anything about unity. It was about division. You know, and so to hear these people say that, in particular, they being of a different race than what we were, that was attractive.
So
you know, we said it. We sang about it. We all our lives about loving one another. I mean, that was a standard thing. It's just as Charles said. I was in a black Baptist church. All churches I went were black and Christian, of course, and this was different because the people were talking about it, but they were also demonstrating it to us. You know, that I even could go into their house. We could go to their house. We could be treated like they are. In fact, one time I took their little boy, who was about 4 years old, to a homecoming game at A&T. I couldn't believe so they even trusted me with their child.
Wow.
And I went to this big stadium, people everywhere, and I'm holding him because like he was too little to walk around in that crowd. And people, I guess, were wondering, what is that? He must be taking care of somebody's children. You know, I don't know what they thought, but I knew that they didn't call to check on him. You know, they just freely let him go. So there were a lot of things that I think we learned that they not only talked about, but that they did. And to me, these days, doing what you talk about is something that I feel very strongly about these days. I think we do a lot talking, but I'm not sure we're doing all the things we need to be doing. And then they were doing it, and it was just creeping into integration in America.
So Van,
But they were already integrated.
So I know that you were a social activist during that time. Tell us a little bit about your own personal history. I know that you were arrested a number of times. I know you took part in the sit-ins. but I only know that because we've had a few conversations. But can you share with us what that Greensboro was like at the time and what your involvement in that activism was?
Well, I think my background is very similar to any black person who lived in that era. We were not welcomed in a lot of places. In fact, there were so many places you couldn't go. For instance, if I went to the bus station, if I was going to take a bus, I couldn't go in the front of the bus station. I had to know that there's a room on the back for colored people. If I took a train to Washington D.C., which I did often, I'd have to go through a different place. You approach a building and there's the front of it. It's a majestic building, but you had to know, and so I learned that you go though around to the back of that and you come in a different hall. The people who wait on you aren't even the same people who wait on the white people. The only time you come together is on the platform to get on the train. Downtown, you couldn't. There were only some stores you could go in. So this was a life we had learned, a life imposed on all black people in America. So this was a strange time. Now in Greensboro also happened to be the place where the first 4 black students who were freshmen at North Carolina A&T on February 1st, 1960. 1960. That's right, 1960. They went to Woolworths and sat at the lunch counter. I was a senior in high school. They were freshmen in college. 2 of them I knew because they were from Greensboro. So we knew them very well. Had no idea anybody was even thinking about doing anything like that. It was unbelievable that they did it. It became national news in a night. 4, and you see the pictures all the time. These 4 guys sitting at the lunch counter at Woolworths. Well, when I was a child, always growing up in Greensboro, I had to pass that lunch counter. Sometimes my mother would even avoid going down the row where the stools were, just so we wouldn't have to see the people eating. Because we had a little counter down in the basement that sold hot dogs and sodas. And that's where black people went. If you had to go to the bathroom, there was one right down there by that little thing that the employees who were black of Woolworths used, and we could use that one. But we couldn't go and all the signs saying restrooms this way. You knew not to follow those. Those were leading to the white ones. So it was a very strange time to come through. And it's strange that we sit here now and we talk.
You have the juxtaposition of this being where you grew up, how you grew up, and then this Baha'i community coming across this Baha'i community who actually put action behind the philosophy of which was trying to be achieved. That must have been very attractive.
Well, they weren't doing it because 4 freshmen, 4 black men went and sat down at a lunch counter. They were already integrated.
Right.
Well, nothing in Greensboro was integrated that you knew about. And if they were integrated, it was a secret. So this was pretty earth-shattering, really, to know that now I'm meeting people in Greensboro. Charles and I are meeting this Baha'i community, old white women mostly, who are talking about how we got to love each other. Race doesn't make any difference. Whether you're black or white, we're all the same. That this is what God had taught us. But now he's telling us exactly, black and white and all different cultures and all, where Christ didn't say that. He just said, love thy neighbor as thyself. Well, all my neighbors were black. So there's a time, a change in time. And so that's when Baha'is believe, messengers come every 500 to 1,000 years to renew those spiritual teachings and update where we are. So that made sense to me. I just had to deal with Baha'u'llah. I had to deal with something that was a little foreign in my life. And Charles had to deal with it more than I did. Even though I had always gone to a church, always sung in church. I went to church more than one time a week. But I would say he was stronger in scripture, in Christian scripture, than I was. I went to Sunday school. I went to all those things. But he was, because he would say, I don't like this. I didn't see this, So we had to grow.
Yeah. So Charles, like, what was it that attracted you to the faith, other than the fact that there was integration going on and they were putting, into practice one of the major tenets of the faith? Like you said, you had lots of debates. What was it that really attracted you, and what was your process?
Well, there were two things going on. One is that the Baha'is' interpretation of God and Jesus and who they were and the station of Jesus was different from mine. Like I had been taught that there is no way to anything, truth, whatever, unless you do it in the name of Jesus Christ. That's the only way you can do it. And the Baha'is were saying that that's not the case, that that God's truth has always been here. And God has always sent messengers, and they taught us according to what the needs are. And that now the need is for us to be united. Okay, so I had been taught all that. That's not what I had been taught all my life. So there was a strong emotional thing going on there in trying to deal with that. There's social teachings about unity and love. Yes, we could accept those. And so what I decided to do, and we decided to just get some of their books to read them, and then we could disprove the whole thing. And of course, when you start reading, you have to start reflecting on it, and we would, and I think, of course, that was the beginning of the downfall, if you call it a downfall, because the more you read, the more it made, at least it began to make a little bit more sense in relationship to the needs of the time. That we needed to learn how to work and live and be as one people. And then also in discussing things with the Baha'is in the area, there was always one who was just very, who seemed to listen differently. When you're talking about something that's new for you, you have to kind of think about, where is the person that you're talking to? How do they really feel about things? And so often some of the Baha'is would just tell us things, this is the way it is, and I would just disagree with it, and we'd go back and forth. But there was one Baha'i there he's a Persian friend, and actually he was on the faculty at the university. His name is Faridun Jalali, and he was just wonderful and loving, and he would listen. And he may have said the same things that others said, but it was just something about the tone, the way he talked about it, about his passion, that you would end up agreeing with him with that. And I don't know, these things were going on. The head was doing this battle, but then there were things happening with our heart and with the way people were acting. And so that was different. And then we began to, and I think over several months of doing that, we decided independently. I think Van enrolled in the faith. And then I enrolled shortly after that. I took a lot of books with me home during the summer when we were out of school, and started reading them more and more. And when I came back, enrolled in the faith. And so that was the beginning of becoming officially part of the Baha'i community. So of course that began a new chapter. So now what do you do?
And what did the two of you do?
And during that time also, the Baha'i community in the state was not very, very large. So there were conferences or summer schools or winter schools that we attended. And we got to know many of the Baha'is, probably most of them during that time. And it was always an interracial, warm, loving group. It was just like we'd go to places like in South Carolina for maybe 3 or 4 days. And we'd be there, and it was like being in a different world. You know, when you felt the warmth and the love that was felt between the people who were there, and they were of different ages, and we were, I guess, there weren't a lot of initially there weren't a lot of young, particularly Black men who were becoming Baha'is. So I guess we were kind of a novelty in that sense. But of course, that began to change later on as people became more and more conscious of what the Baha'i faith was and what was happening in the United States as well. There was the beginning of the whole idea of integration and the fact that we have to work and live together. There were, all of that was happening simultaneously. And so I think that in the Black communities, when they heard that there was a religion and people were practicing it, then lots of them started becoming Baha'is. A lot of Black people became Baha'is in the southern states, and in North Carolina and South Carolina and Georgia, many places, because the Black community already knew that God wanted us to be as one people. And so when they heard that there was a religion that could believe that, and they could see them practicing it together, then they accepted. So it was like a new movement in the area, and we were very blessed, I think, and honored to be able to be a part of that. And a lot of it had to do with music. We were singing all over the place.
Yeah. I was thinking, let's backtrack a little. I gave you a picture of the university choir. Now, this is where Charles and I were before we became Baha'is, but we became Baha'is while we were in this choir. Look at it. See if you know where we are. There's Charles. Third row, second person. He's looking straight at you. And then if you look up there in the top right corner, there I am. Now, we were not Baha'is when we met in here, but by the time we got through a couple of years of choir, we had become Baha'is. And we were the only people in that choir that became Baha'is. The other thing is to look at all these beautiful Black faces. This is at a historically Black college. This is what we knew. I didn't even know, other than the few Baha'is I had met, I didn't know anybody white when I graduated from this college and went to work. It was just the Baha'is that I knew who were white. We took two different paths. Charles went into the service. It was the Vietnam War. I knew people dying, my Black friends dying, serving America. And I was working for the Navy Department. And my degree is in architectural engineering, not agricultural engineering, architectural engineering. And in the engineering office, I was our first Black engineer in there. Well, we had to make all kinds of adjustments because now we're thrown into a group of folk who are Black and white, and a lot of times we would be the only Black person in there. This was at Bennett College. That's their paper, Bennett Banner, and that's me sitting there playing the guitar up front. Knight and Stanley was behind me. A preacher during the whole time I was in Greensboro, North Carolina, but a racial activist. And we were on the stage doing this, the Freedom, it calls us the Freedom Singers over at Bennett College. This next picture, we're at some, I don't know what, Charles, you might know, some Baha'i conference. And we just had a picture taken. There we are, Lord. Again, now we know that this is CJ the DJ. This is Laurie. Mm-hmm. We met her way back in those times. She was younger than we were, but she has sung now in these days, in these late days, in the choral festival at the Baha'i Temple. So she was a Baha'i before we were Baha'is. So now we're beginning to meet people. This is probably at Frogmore, somewhere around Frogmore. When I look at those trees back there, it was scary down in South Carolina with all this moss hanging down.
That's right.
This is in Greensboro, and that's Charles facing out, and I'm to his right. I mean, to my right, to our right. We were dedicating a peace tree in Greensboro, North Carolina. So this is all stuff that happened in Greensboro, North Carolina, and while we were in Greensboro. And then our careers began, and Charles was getting into that as we were talking about the teaching, which we called the mass teaching in the South, but in South Carolina and other places. And he was very involved in that. And I was working in Washington, D.C. area, but I came back down to participate in this. And this was to tell black people about the coming of a new messenger whose voice was similar to Christ's, but he came with a message of oneness, of love, and he repeated everything Christ said, and Moses, and all the messages before. Oh, Lord.
Of course, this is much years, these are years later. We still had dark hair at that time.
That's right.
Yeah.
And all the while we were separated, we still were in touch with each other. Our families were in touch with each other. I sang at Charles's wedding.
So I had mentioned in the introduction that Charles lived in West Africa for some time. Can you tell us, Charles, what brought you to West Africa and what kind of work you did doing there?
Sure. During the time of the teaching and that kind of thing in the southern states, we were part of a small group and we did a tour in Central America, and we were very fortunate that that tour was arranged by then Councilor Hooper Dunbar. And we went to many places and the concerts were set up and hundreds of people would come and we would sing and talk about the Baha'i faith. And they were very attracted to that message of unity and love. And so he was, my wife and I and another young lady were together, Jenny Ripstock at that time. He was constantly encouraging us, telling us that, you should think about going pioneering. And that is going to another country to help serve the faith. And of course, there's always the biggest dream to go to Africa. And so he said, do it in spaces. So we went to the Bahamas for about a year and a half. And we were there trying to get used to the idea of being away from home. And then we left with our son, who was 2 years old at the time, and we went to settle in West Africa, as pioneers in that country. And we were there in Sierra Leone and also in the Gambia for about 16 years. And there working, getting to know people, learning from being in Africa with such beautiful, pure-hearted, wonderful souls who were just eagerly becoming and attracted to the teachings of the Baha'i faith. You didn't have the black and white issue there. You had Muslims and you had Christians, but in the black countries, they weren't argumentative. They accepted each other. They had holidays for Christians, holidays for Muslims, and we had Baha'i holidays. So there was a lot of celebration going on, but it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And we worked in different capacities there. And in one of the countries, because my background was in education, so I taught. And at one of the other countries, I worked with the American embassy there. So it was nice to get a chance to see what was happening from a local perspective and to be part of trying to help build community. And, and Black people always want to go to Africa. It's a very, it's the homeland, and it was just wonderful to be able to walk around and you don't stand out because of your color. That's a new experience to be able to do that as compared to here. This particular picture was taken in Swaziland, and that was their native dress there. And this is the way they dressed most of the time. There was one of the other Baha'i friends who was there. We took this picture together, but I think that's another experience, and it's encouraged in the Baha'i faith that if wherever you are, being a Baha'i it's not about being classified that that's your religion. It's about your life, and that you're really a citizen of the world, that God has released a new energy. We're in a new stage in our development right now. And that stage is we are moving to everything's becoming universal, and so our systems have to convey that this is what God's plan is, that we're actually spiritual beings, and that this is our workshop here on the earth. And of course, as you stated at the beginning, one of the gravest deterrents for that is racism, and all the materialism that we have here, all the standards that identify people based on their color, how much money they have, their educational standing. This is not according to the definition of who God says that we are. And so now we're in this mode, we're changing, we're going through this transition where we're getting closer to what God wants. And so, of course, there's a lot of turmoil, because if our hearts are not there, then we're not ready to accept that. And lots of people obviously are not ready for that. But we have to, if it's a reality, and we know that is, and that's why we're part of this. And it's not just Baha'is. There are lots of people who have also in tune with this, the idea that we must that we are a global community, and they want to also work and to be part of that. So we have to join hands with these like-minded people, and then as a unit, we have rebuild the community, not patch up what is there, because it's not based on a just system, but to rebuild the community based on justice, And Baha'u'llah talks about how Black people have a special role to do and role to play in that. It refers to them as being the pupil of the eye, being able to see what is out there. And the downtrodden people, the Native American people, the downtrodden peoples of the world, have been given this special gift by God. But we have to work to be at that spiritual station. You're given capacity, but you have to work to get there, through various types of spiritual practices that include, of course, the foundation is prayer and meditation and fasting and all those things, study of the Baha'i writings. But that's the world that we're in right now that we have to build.
So how would you say that for both of you, your work in social justice has impacted your lives? Like through the Baha'i lens and through the worldview of just being a Black American, how would you say that that's impacted how you move in the world?
I think we both came through very different experiences, and during our maturation, not only in the faith, but grew up and had children and grandchildren, we had really different experiences. I'm just looking at the picture of Charles in Swaziland. He went back to the mother country of Black folk, of all of us. Richard, recently, I've seen it now in the past 2 days, a thing released in 2011 about the world's 6,000 modern languages come from a single mother tongue. And it's from the sub-Saharan Africa. Everything proves that we all came from Africa. So here's Charles in that. I go to the nation's capital practically, and I become the first Black engineer in my office, and I had to matriculate through that. I had to find a place to live. I eventually became the first Black person to move in a huge complex of apartments just outside of Washington and on its way to my work for the Navy. And I had to wait till 1968, January, when the Open Housing Act was passed. And that's when I could move in. I moved in, and then for all my couple of years there, I got married. We started to raise one child, and we had to move out because when you had a child, you got to move up. You have to move into some other place. We had to get a house. But all that time, we were still the only black couple in there. We were still, though, teaching in the south part of Maryland, the southern Maryland, teaching people about the Baha'i faith. And what we were teaching, really something I think black people have always believed in, as Charles said. We should love one another. But we don't see it. It's not even around us. Even as a Christian in my church, we were all black. We sing songs of love, and we're black. And so it was a challenge. Then everywhere from then on, but to where I am now, where there are almost no black people, I've recognized almost it was not easy, and it was not immediate, but I recognized there's a difference in not being around anybody black. After living, growing up, being working for social justice, joining all the things I can join that have something to do with racial justice, trying to also be a good Baha'i. I think what it focused me on was I have to do more than I did in my early life, when I sang the songs of love, and when I thought it was so wonderful to talk about love and unity, and we shall overcome, blah, blah. And then you're not doing things. You're not even doing things and this is what I think that early Baha'i community was doing. These people loved us into the Baha'i faith. They really did. They loved us into the Baha'i faith. And we, I think, were reluctant in the beginning. And I never thought I would change my religion. Oh, no. But I did. And I've never regretted it, because it opened so many other things for me to think about. You can't believe in love if you're not showing love. You can't believe in unity of people if you're not showing that you want to be unified. You can't continue to talk about we need to be one human family, but you're not doing anything about it. God didn't intend for it to just happen. He gave us this plan for us to work on it. And that's what's been happening to me over the past few years. And then Charles and I reconnected after he came back to the country. And more and more, we're more involved with things like, how do we make people even think about the kind of work that is necessary for us to be one human family? Even, what does it take for me to use this power that Charles mentioned, the pupil of the eye? I can't just sit here and gloat because I have that title. I got to do something, because it's the others around me who will see what I'm seeing with my pupil of the eye, which I am blessed with as a black person. I didn't know that. I didn't know that for a long, long time.
How about you, Charles?
Well, I think like now, what's happening particularly is that, the proof of the pudding, is in the taste. I mean, we have to really be what we say we are. We have to have to show that. We have to be genuine about it. Otherwise, people are not going to listen. And I think we have so many extremes. That's why we have all the extremes right now, you know. Like there was a time when the masses of Black people would be attracted to interracial gatherings. But that time is past because people have tried it and wanted to reach out, and they were not received and accepted. And so now you have to prove that you really are who you say you are, and you have to prove that through your actions. And so I think it's exciting though, because the whole world right now is being tested, you know, as to what is your, like, having an identity, you know, who are you? You know, who are you, and who defined and who made you the way you are and how you feel about things? So those kinds of questions are being asked, and people, if you can have a space that's conducive to conversation, of sharing of ideas, then there can be growth. And so, like now, I think that's what the Baha'i community is doing, is providing spaces, is building spaces wherein people can sit down and talk and listen and share, and also have differences of opinions. You know, like we came, as we mentioned before, we came from a foundation based on love for God. But then now, like, what does it look like with individuals? You know, what would that look like if we have a space together with someone who is coming, and they are, depending upon what their background is, we have to design the space that's suitable for them, and to be genuine about it. Because I think people really feel whether or not one is genuine very quickly in this day and time. So that's a challenge. And so like now in our work, people love music. So there's always music is always there. It's always a part of that. That's because it kind of goes to the heart. It overrides all of the other stuff that we have for a few moments. And then to be able to, if you're going to talk to someone about the plan of God, is that we be united and that our progress is depending upon that. Now, if we're going to do that, then we have to know where the person is, how they think, what brought them to where they are. It's not about what I think I know, but if I truly care about you, and I spend time with you, and it's the kind of friends we have, friendships wherein you can call at any time. You know, you can share any aspect of your life. You know, people that you spend holidays with, people that you come and stay in your home and they bring their children. You know, those are real friendships. And then when you form those kinds of friendships with individuals, then we can share. You know, we can openly share, and we can feel from the heart of each person that, well, you know, this is where this person is and what they believe. And so all these years, you know, we're constantly grooming, trying to understand and to know what God's will is. I mean, that's everybody's struggle, you know, because how can we know what God is? I mean, we're just ordinary people, but we've been told, you know, through these messengers, through what Baha'u'llah brought, and it's the same message that Jesus and others brought, that we are spiritual beings, that God defines our identity. You know, not this country. God defines that. And so how does he define us? What do we look like? And he tells us what we look like. So if I can keep that in my mind, it doesn't matter if a man, well, I'm still trying to be able to be detached from that. But when people are unkind, when they say terrible things, or when we live in systems that are not based on justice, you know, when you're under the eye of whomever is in charge in a negative manner. But I have to be able to live in that and still not let it influence who I truly know that I am. And then I can be an agent of change, because as I change myself, then that can be felt, and I can be compassionate, I can show empathy, and I can show love. And that's what we have to do now in order to change the world that we're in. It has to be based on actions, small steps, big steps, whatever type we're able to make, even if we're crawling, and then to be supportive of each other. And that's where friendship comes in. Oh, well, I had this terrible experience. You call your friend, it's my God, what is happening? I can say, well, I was trying to be nice and this person did this terrible thing. And when I was trying to be straightforward and honest and they treated me in this particular way. So you can call to your friend, you can call to a band, or you can say, well, this crazy thing happened. We can talk about it, we can laugh about it. And when it's over with, you feel better. That's what brothers and sisters are. We don't keep all that. We need to have those kinds of outlets, and because we truly are connected, and then we become stronger because of it and be able to offer something to others, hopefully, as we go about our lives.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. This conversation already has been so enlightening and so enriched. And we have some really wonderful questions in the chat box. Have either of you guys been back to the household or the neighborhood where you guys had these conversations, where you first started learning about the Baha'i faith?
Well, I don't go to Greensboro that often, and none of the Baha'is, almost none of them that were there when I became a Baha'i are there now. So I very seldom get to see the community there.
There are a couple I've seen here and there. It's always been wonderful. We always reminisce, and it's special.
Wonderful. Van, is there a place people can purchase CD, the Baha'i Gospel Choir in Luxembourg today?
Actually, the only place for the Baha'i Gospel Choir live in Luxembourg is to me directly. I can put my email address there.
Excellent. And people can also reach you via Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Excellent. So someone wrote, to advance the cause of racial unity, what do each of you believe white people need to understand and accept? What a great question.
Well, that's hard for me. I can tell you here what I've discovered is they first have to meet a black person. I think people are too accustomed now to seeing a black person, but not really meeting them. And that can also happen in a community. It can happen even in our Baha'i community. There could be a black person that you see, and you may think that just seeing that person means that you have bonded in some way. But to get to know a person means a lot more. When Charles was talking just earlier, I was thinking, now Charles and I talk fairly regularly, several times a week. We just call and talk. So our friendship didn't just start way back, and then that was it. And then we re-met and we called and said, hi, how you doing? And that was it. We talk. That kind of relationship has to exist, I think, between a black and a white person, where you visit with each other. You want to be with each other. You want to go to dinner. You want to have over for dinner. You learn who the person is. And I think that's a challenge, because I meet too many white people right now who say they've never met a black person really personally. And I live a place where almost every white person has grown up with a black person taking care of them as a little child. But they don't know any black people now.
It's all about being proactive. If you want to make the world better by becoming close to someone of an opposite race, then do the work. If you're not sure what it looks like, if you want to find out what does friendship look like, ask yourself, how is your white friend involved in your life? What are the things that you do with that white person? And everything you do, then just switch it and make it a black person, change it to a black person. And it'll give you something to work from, but you just can't stay in the realm of asking. You have to get out there and start doing the things that, according to your definition of what friendship is, and do it with somebody that's black. And don't put limitations on it. You know, don't have great expectations. Person's gonna just instantly love me. You know, you just, if we are sincere, then we have to do the work and just keep at it, you know, just keep at it.
And don't be superficial. White person, don't be superficial. I talk to a lot of white people, but they don't know me. So how can you have any bond if you aren't spending some time, as Charles said, some time with each other?
I am so sorry, everyone. There's a very incredible thunderstorm where I am right now. So we lost power. So thank you so much for continuing on.
Don't treat a black person like he's a child or she is a child. I don't know how many people even think that they do that.
Change will not happen overnight. It's going to take time.
Yeah.
So be patient. You know, be patient with yourself. Be patient with other people, and just keep trying. Because we got here, it took many years to get here, and it's going to take a long time to get a way to fix it. Mm-hmm. So don't give up. Just keep working at it. You know, whatever capacity you can, just keep working at it. If you're sincere about it, if we're all sincere about it, then we just have to keep working at it.
And we were talking about authentic Baha'is back in the day that we started studying the faith and deciding to become a part of it. I mean, I didn't even think that the people were putting on. I didn't think that they were trying to trick me. I didn't think any of that. Our relationship was a very warm and strong relationship, even with the old white women, you know.
One of the things that I've been very appreciative, Van, over the last year or two, as seen you, some of the comments, some of the posts that you've made on Facebook, and some of the microaggressions that take place around racism. Would you talk a little bit about that?
And I think people who are around me recognize that in these days maybe it's because I'm getting older, I don't know, but I'm having less patience with a smile and a quotation. And I'm wanting to see our trying to make what we say we want happen, you know, in a very physical way. You know, and it's been hard through this COVID, and yet easy through COVID. I've been surprised at how we are so often in each other's face now. And I don't know, when we sat in rooms, whether we could connect with people or not. Now I'm wanting to be able to connect with people. And I think that it does take a lot of work, and it doesn't happen immediately. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen immediately. It takes time because there's trust, a building of trust.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've been so moved by is your willingness to be vulnerable and to share where things have been hurtful, and to help educate those who absolutely should know better. But if we don't have these authentic relationships and friendships, then who is there in our lives for those of us who are white to be able to have those conversations with us? And it's not fair that you should have to do that. Hopefully we as white, some of us who maybe are a little more educated in that way, would be able to intercede, but those people aren't always in the room.
In this process, ultimately, it is about it's about spirituality. It's about spiritual qualities. I mean, ultimately, that's what this whole race thing, that's how it can be solved. It has to be through a spiritual consciousness. That's the only way it's going to work, you know. And what are those? Those are things of empathy, of patience, of forgiveness, all of those things. And we are taught, have been conditioned to kind of put those things to the side, you know. Like if a person is acting horribly to me, then I have the right to respond the same way. You know, it's all about what my right is. And my right is to be godlike. My right is to be forgiving. My right is to be patient. My right is to do all these things. And if I can apply those principles in dealing with white people or black people, then the world is going to change. You know, the way that we've been practicing it, the way we've been trying to handle it in these past decades or so, it's, you know, you can legislate that a person can sit in a place they like or buy property anywhere they like. But you can't legislate that you have to love somebody. A law can't do that. And that's what we've been going through, I think, in this country. You know, and luck and good. I mean, and it's a wonderful thing that the laws are changed and that they are more fair. And of course, we have a long way to go. It's wonderful, you know, that we don't want to put down that progress. But it's going to take more than that. It's going to take more than it. And I think that's why we were attracted to the faith and have been trying to do all we can with it all along now, because it's more than that. You know, it's who we are as spiritual beings interacting with others who are spiritual beings as well, and then combating the way our country, our community has defined who we are, you know, dealing with that. So I think that's the work.
How would you say, you know, in 2021, the beginning of 2021, we saw extreme racism, you know, I mean, we've seen extreme racism over all these years, right? So that's nothing new. However, in, you know, the white supremacy that has reared its head over the last 10 years, 20 years, has been, you know, I think a lot of people thought that we'd come a lot further than we have as far as race is concerned in America. Mm-hmm. So how would you say that has, you know, the difference of what you saw in the Baha'i community almost 60 years ago and what you see today, what would you say the difference is?
You know, I think this period is so different from the time that we became Baha'is. Now, I said we came out of segregation. You know, it was a time when we didn't even know white people. But now, many black people do know a white person. I'm surprised that so many white people don't know a black person. And I hear that from the people who I am in touch with in the North Shore of Illinois. However, the killing of George Floyd, I think, shocked us, but also the election of a president who would just speak racism to America and give them the freedom, if not the privilege, to come from wherever they were and say what they really think. Martin Luther King used to say way back, he said, one thing black people knew in the South was they knew where they stood with the white people. Because white people, you know, you knew, you know, it was segregated, you just stay out. You didn't know where you stood if you were in the North, sometimes in the Midwest. That's why black people, the Great Migration, was trying to get out of the South. Well, now that has changed. Those folk who were quiet are no longer quiet. Those folk who believe that races should be separated are saying it. And they weren't, I mean, they weren't saying it before, but back in the day, they were saying it. We knew. It was obvious. It was black and colored, black and colored, black and colored. Then came integration, which is not really all that much integration. Think about the schools. The high school I went to in Greensboro, North Carolina, all black. It was integrated. People took their kids out. It is now, today, all black. So how far have we come? The laws have changed, and now we're talking about the hearts and minds. How do we change the hearts and the minds? Laws keep changing, but we have to change hearts and minds. And black people have to change some hearts and minds too, because we grew up also in a systemic racism. So some of the stuff we learned is not the stuff that we would have wanted to learn. And yet, a white person could always come into a black community and be welcomed. Even in my time before all this, a segregation, a white man walking through collecting money, knocking on each door, collecting money. Hey, Miss So-and-so, get my money. Even the rent, collecting rent. They come right in. They weren't afraid because they were in charge. Well, now many of the black people of America are still in their black communities. That redlining is awful. So when we think about the area where I am, it's going to be all white for a long time. Trying to integrate it is very hard. And it's the same with the black communities. Trying to integrate it. How many times you see white people moving into black communities?
Not very often.
Black people move into white communities. They always have as laws changed. So we have a lot to work on. And I think we were awakened with looking at TV over and over again with a white policeman's knee on the neck of a black man and watch the man die. That had to shock everybody.
For 8 minutes.
Killed him.
Almost 9 minutes.
Killed him. Killed him before our eyes. You couldn't deny it. Maybe that's why it's so hard for us to correct history. Now many of us are working in schools, trying to see if we can. Why don't we tell history, the true history? Why we keep learning what's not true? And I think if our spiritual selves are lifted, we'll be able to see. We need to look at history the way history is. But not until, because we keep making up reasons why this can't happen, reasons why black people can't move here, reasons why this crime in the black community, a community created by racism in America. Land couldn't be bought. Oh, money couldn't be given to the veterans. Oh, just so many things. And I think now we're becoming a little more aware of it because bits and pieces of this true history is creeping out and we're having to deal with it.
Thank you, Van. One of the questions or comments and questions that was made was, you were reinforcing through your presentation that Black men are spiritual, religious, and engaged in the faith community. I also see in all the YouTube gospel songs the same. I've been asking myself for some time now, what do we do to attract Black men into the faith now?
Well, I don't think there's a simple answer, but I think the one thing that we can do, those of us who are, Black men who are presently a part of this, is that we can become friends. We can become close to these young men. We can show them that we can become like the father figure or the uncle, and in a genuine way, just like we were talking about the relationship between Blacks and whites in a genuine way. We have to do the same thing with the Black men that are out there, because all of what we have described that's been put on them to make them feel and act and identify who they are, according to what the society has made them. That's, we understand all that. And as we are older and have experienced it, then we can walk with them. We can become really close and to be there to answer questions and to be concerned about them, to give them advice. I think that's the closest way to do it. Just be there for them, and to listen and be genuine friends, stay in touch, build the trust. And then they will begin, that trust will come back. It will come back. They will say, okay, well, this is real. And then maybe they begin to ask, what is it in your life that made you the way you are now? And then we can share that, and I think that's what the Baha'i community is trying to do, to help build these kinds of bonds. That's one thing I think we can do.
I agree. This is a very difficult question, but I think we have to really also acknowledge that the Black folk of America have been supported by the Black women so strongly. And those are the people who've been raped. Many of us have come from awful things that happened hundreds of years ago. And they were trying to keep children together. The system is trying to pull it all apart. They're trying to keep it all together. And then with systemic racism the way it is, black men couldn't even get jobs except a certain kind of job. How could you raise a family? How could you make enough money to live? Even our veterans, I mentioned it before, they couldn't even buy homes. They couldn't even get loans. So we started way behind. Now, if you're a person like that, let's think about, I don't know if anybody has a mouse or a rat in your house. Have you ever gotten one trapped in a corner? It's running. It's always running. But you get it trapped in a corner, you see that thing growl. You say, what in the world? And in many ways, Black people of America have almost had to be that. You've got to fight back at some point. When am I going to fight back? How can I? How can I alone do this? Well, as we become brothers, as we Black folk become brothers, and then brothers with our white folk, we're going to take care of each other. Now, trusting is a very difficult thing. When you think about all the things that have happened, and you say, okay, well, it's over. Let's go on like everything is fine. That's hard to take. So I would love to be able to do that, but you're going to have to show me something now. White people, you're going to have to show something. And it has to be real. And we're ready. Charles and I were ready. I mean, who ever thought we were going to become Baha'is? I said, I'll leave if it doesn't turn out to be what I thought it was going to be. Well, I never left. I never left because I had hope. I had hope because the word is so good. But these days I'm saying, let's don't just let the word be so good. Let's try to see if we can make that word right. Make that happen. And if we do that, I don't think we'll have a problem, because people are looking for stuff. And I would be looking if I weren't a Baha'i. What can I do? So I'm trying to be involved in everything I can be involved in that has social justice to it, racial justice to it. I just turned 78, and I'm thinking, Lord, let's don't let another year slip by and I haven't done anything but talked. So I'm on myself. And I think all of us have to be on ourselves. But how can we do more than just talk? Let's put some of this stuff to action.
Let deeds, not words, be your adorning.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you both. I'm so sorry we've run out of time. We could do this, I'm sure, again and get so much from both of you. My dear brothers, I'm so honored to have shared this space with you today. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this conversation, and I look forward to working with you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We've enjoyed being here with you.